What's up, YouTube? This is Fat Tony Gaming coming at you here today with a premium Murakumo deck profile. I've been a big fan of Murakumo ever since the AL4 spoilers got released. I really like the rush down playstyle that it is, where it swarms the field, and been trying to translate that into premium for a while, and I think I've come up with a pretty solid deck list so far. Now, I will preface this by saying that if you're looking for a tier 1 premium deck, this is probably not it. Yes, the deck is very good, but the deck also has a lot of flaws, and especially with the gatekeepers of the competitive format being things like Geese and No Life King Assassin, this deck does not put up with those very well unless you get the God Hand and can rush them down immediately. That being said, this is a great deck if you want to play it casually, play it at locals. It's really inexpensive to build right now, because a lot of people, like Murakumo was never the most popular deck up until recent, when it started getting actually like really solid support. And so without further ado, let's get into the profile here. So first up, I got starter Stealth Beast Cat Devil. I run this for the more consistent draw. I've seen some other people run the starter from GBT13, where it's if an attack hits a Vanguard when it boosts, you can tuck it into Soul and put a card from the bottom of your deck from your drop zone to the bottom of your deck. If that card has the Shadow Stitch ability, you get to draw a card and countercharge. I wasn't a huge fan of that because A, it's on hit, B, you need to run Shadow Stitch units, which this deck really doesn't run a lot of, and C, it's not an immediate card draw. Like your opponent being able to control when it goes off is just not that great. And so to me, I prefer the more consistent draw of Cat Devil. Onto the grade 3s, I run 4 copies of Covert Demonic Dragon Mandala Lord. This is your main grade 3 ride, being able to on ride get that Accel circle and then clone out 2 copies of other cards. Is really good. Being able to fill up the field and pressure your opponent, super good, regardless of whether you're going first or second. So that's really good for this deck, being able to keep up the pressure. Other grade 3 I run 4 copies of Twin Swords of Musashi. He is your beat stick, basically. For those of you who don't know what he does, Vanguard, Rearguard, when he attacks, it doesn't have to be on just Vanguard. When he attacks, if you have more Rearguards than your opponent, he gets 5k, and your opponent, if they would guard from hand, has to call 2 or more Guardians at the same time. That's really relevant against things like Protect decks, because if they want to PG it, like say you hit a crit or something and it's threatened and lethal, they have to drop 2 cards from hand before they can even pay the cost for the PG. So they will the PG basically becomes discard 2 to block it. So that's super good. And then other decks is just really hard to guard with. I mean, yeah, you can just drop a G Guardian because it does specify from hand, but now you're wasting one of your big defensive options. Onto the grade 2s, I'm running 4 copies of Swift Archer Fushimi. So Fushimi, I really like because, you know, if you have 4 more rearguards, he's a 14k attacker, and of course that counts himself. This deck can very easily build field, so that's almost always going to be live. You know, 14k attacker on rearguard circle, 24k on an Accel circle, and then his on place is also really good as kind of like a control option. When he's placed, you choose one of your units, not just rearguards, units, and then that unit can attack a unit in the back row. So like if there's lots of games where if my opponent's got like a pesky booster and I'm going first, I'll ride up to grade 3, I'll call this to the side, and I'll have my grade 3 attack that obnoxious unit in the back row, and lots of times my opponent's going to let that go through. I mean, yeah, generally you are wasting an attack, but at the same time, having that option of being able to take out problem cards is really relevant. Second grade 2 that I run, 4 copies of Stealth Dragon Magai Mandala. So this is your main clone target for Mandala Lord, because Mandala Lord, when he's placed, can choose himself, and this card is treated as Mandala Lord in the deck, so that's really good. And then he also counts as Mandala Lord on Rearguard Circle, which is going to be relevant for one of our strides, one of the strides that we run. And then also, if you have 3 or more Mandala Lords on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, and these count themselves because they are Mandala Lords, he gets boost. So if you have him and say like Fushimi in the same column, and they're both in, both of their requirements are met, that's 23k column right there. That's pretty good. That's 15k shield needed against Force Clans. And because the deck just naturally struggles with Force Clans because it's an Accel clan, that can be very helpful. Last grade 2 I run 4 copies of Stealth Beast Bloody Mist. He's really good for building up field early game, allowing you to have targets to clone out with Mandala Lord to keep up pressure and stuff like that. Yeah, the copy comes out as only a 5k, but that's very rarely relevant. Just getting that extra card out onto the field can be very useful as be it an interceptor or something like that because it is a grade 2. So I find that really useful. And then plus he also meshes well with one of our other strides that we run. And then of course we run the grade 1 version, Million Rat. He's also again good just to keep up early game pressure, build field, and then on top of that, you're also thinning your deck, so you're increasing your trigger compression. So that's another thing that should be noted. Every time you're cloning out these normal units, you're just leaving your deck with more and more triggers in it because you're pulling out all the non-triggers. Excuse me. So that being said, again, builds early field, gives you targets for Mandala when you on-ride, thins your deck. Really, really good. Next up, our grade 1s, we're running 4 copies of Stealth Dragon Amatsu Snipe. So Amatsu Snipe is continuous skill, Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. If something was called from the deck, that turn he gains 5k. He's continuously plus 5. So he's almost always either a 12k booster, 12k attacker. Throw him onto an Accel Circle, he's a 22k attacker. He does count himself if you call him out from deck and he's the only card because it's continuous. It just needs that ability fulfilled for the turn, or that condition fulfilled for the turn. So next up we have 3 copies of Stealth Rogue Ataka, stride fodder, basic thing. You want to be able to stride consistently. Your strides are where all your big plays come from, and also where a lot of your pressure comes from in the mid to late game. I've contemplated cutting him down to 2 because I really want to up my next grade 1 to 3, and that is Stealth Rogue of Concealment Tanba. So Tanba, for those of you who don't know what he does, Shadow Stitch ability, at the end of the battle that your unit's attack did not hit a Vanguard, you can choose a normal unit from your drop zone and put on the bottom of your deck, and if we do, he gets 3,000 power until the end of the turn. It's not GB, which is good, so early game he can be helpful if, say, you had to, guard with some of your combo pieces and stuff like that, or even if your opponent's playing a control deck and they're popping off combo pieces and stuff like that. That's why I kind of want to up him to 3, but the issue is, you want to stride consistently with Ataka, and you really don't want to call him you don't want to use Musashi as your stride fodder for the deck. You'd rather use the Atakas because Musashi is such a good attacker. Trigger lineup, we have 4 heal, and I'm running 8 crit. I've seen some lists running crits, some lists running fronts. I like crits, being able to pressure your opponent and make them, think about whether or not they really want to guard that Vanguard attack or not. And also it helps with mind games with one of our strides. And then, of course, 4 draw PGs because it does open up our grade 1 lineup, and plus the deck can use a little bit of card draw. It does not, outside of building board, it does not generate a lot of card advantage for the hand. Excuse me. Now, moving on to our strides, we have 4 Dharma Deity of the 5 Precepts, Yasui Genma. This is generally your first stride. So with this card, he has 2 skills. The first one, act once per turn. Soul Blast 1, choose a face-down copy of himself from your G-Zone, turn him face up. If you do, choose one of your rear guards or cards in your drop zone. Search your deck for a copy, call it to Rearguard Circle, and then that copy bounces to your hand at the end of the turn. So this is where Magai Mandala, his Rearguard Circle ability, comes into relevance. Because he's treated as Mandala Lord on Rearguard Circle, if you call this out with Mandala Lord the turn before, or even the turn when you ride and then stride, this can copy this to call out regular Mandala Lord from your deck. And then at the end of the turn, it bounces back to your hand, and you now can either re-ride Mandala to get another Accel Circle and build up more field, or you just have a stride fodder. So that's really good. And then his other skill is Generation Break 3. It's a Shadow Stitch ability, so the end of the battle, if his attack missed, you can choose, if it attacked a Vanguard and the attack did not hit, you can choose up to 5 of your other units and give them 5,000 power on a crit until end of turn. That's huge. In the late game, when you have a full board, you very easily get 2, maybe 3 Accel Circles. 2 is generally where you're going to be. You have that full front row, and you're swinging, and your opponent's at 4 damage. That's why we run the crits, because if you were running fronts, then your opponent can just be like, oh, pff, I'm at 4, no guard. I'm not going to take any extra damage. But with crits now, they have to take that gamble. It's like, do I risk getting crit out of the game, or do I just let this evolve into a much bigger problem now that I have to guard literally everything to not die? And of course, if you're lucky enough to see a heal early and G guard against your opponent before you stride, now all of a sudden this is live. But again, generally, if you're doing that, they're not going to be that big at risk of getting crit out of the game. If they're at like 3, sometimes they'll just no guard it because, if you only hit 1 crit, well, they're still good. But he's really just for making combo plays. So next up, we have 4 Rogue Deity of the 3rd Realm, Yasui Goma. So Yasui Goma is really good for those times where you don't have any way to build field. If you need units to pressure and you don't have any way to consistently do it, whether your hand's like clunky and full of triggers, or you couldn't ride Mandala, or your opponent just board wiped you or whatever, he's super good. For those of you who don't know what he does, act once per turn, choose a face-down copy of him from your G-Zone, flip it face-up, and then choose up to 2 of your Yasui G units face-up from your G-Zone and call them to rearguard circle. So, like, if you go like Yasui Genma, and then your opponent nukes your board, you can go into Yasui Goma, and then you can call out a Goma and a Genma, or your 2 face-up Genmas, and so you just get 15k beat sticks. If you have Accel circles, you can call them to the Accel circle. They're 25k attackers. And then his other skill is a Shadow Stitch ability. The end of the battle that your unit attacked a Vanguard and it did not hit, you can draw a card and then choose a card from your hand and put it on the bottom of your deck. That's great for hand filtering, like if you're trying to find combo pieces like a Tonba or something like that, or you need defensive pieces like you're trying to dig for a PG. And it's also useful for putting triggers back into your deck, because this deck does do a lot of in-deck cloning. Or from deck cloning, I should say. You can bottom deck the triggers, and then you can just shuffle them back in, and now you have better trigger compression. Now, moving on, we have 2 copies here. 2 copies of Ambush Demon Stealth Dragon Homer Raider. This card got so much better with the introduction of Accel circles. For those of you who don't know what it does, it's Accel, Counterblast 2, choose a face-down card with the same name, flip it face-up. Then if you have 2 or more cards face-up in your G-Zone, he gets Drive -1 and an auto ability that says, the end of the battle that it attacked a Vanguard, you can choose one of your rear guards. Then choose 3 of your rear guards with the same name as that card, including the card initial card you chose. Put them back to your deck. If you do, stand him and then shuffle your deck. So this deck can very easily get out 2 sets of 3 copies for him to get 2 restands. That ability is not once per turn. You can, as long as you can pay the cost, you can restand him and attack again. I've had lots of games where I go first turn, I'll go ride Mandala Lord, clone out stuff, stride into Genma, get another Mandala Lord back, do it again the next turn, and all of a sudden now I can double Homer Raider. Yes, it's Counterblast 2, but this deck really doesn't use a lot of Counterblast. Only him and the next stride in the deck only actually use Counterblast. And then, speaking of which, the next stride in the deck is 1 copy of Ambush Demon Stealth Dragon Shibaraku Buster. You don't really go into this a whole lot. He's decent to try to build up card advantage, but other than that, you really, you really prefer to go into things like Goma or Genma to keep up units to pressure your opponent. For those of you who don't know what he does, it's Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 2, it's Generation Break 2 ability. Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 2, choose a card from your hand and discard it, choose a card from your drop zone, put it on the bottom of your deck. And then what you do is you choose one of your units, clone it from deck. It gets the ability to perform a drive check on the first battle of the turn. It has to be the first battle. And then at the end of the turn, it goes onto the bottom of the deck. This is good for things like if you have a Musashi, you can clone out a Musashi onto an Accel circle, and all of a sudden now you have a 27k beat stick that your opponent has to guard with 2 or more cards from their hand, and then they get Twin Drive, so you get to buff up the rest of your field. And it is technically a +1 because you're getting 2 extra cards from that extra drive check as well as Shibaraku's triple drive. So that's it for the strides. Now moving on to the G Zone. Or to the G Guardians, already in the G Zone. I run 2 Ambush Demon Stealth Rogue Shirahagino? Yeah. Shirahagino. These names are hard, guys. So what she is GB1, count plus one, choose a face down G Guardian from your G zone, turn it face up. If you do pay the cost, she gets 10,000 shield, and your Vanguard gets the ability at the when your grade 3 or less Guardian is retired, you can put it on the bottom of your deck. This is great for recycling triggers. Your opponent swings in, like, say your opponent swings in with your Vanguard, you guard with this. This is immediately 25k shield. You pay the cost, and then if you drop something like a crit trigger. Now, all right, cool. That's 40k shield, and then at the end of that battle, that crit trigger is going to go back onto the bottom of my deck. So now I have more triggers into my deck. It's also good, like, if your hand's full of combo pieces that you want to put back into your deck, guard with them, put them back into your deck. Really useful. Plus, being 25k shield never hurts. Then I also run 2 copies of Ambush Demon Stealth Fiend Hogan Wing. Hogan Wing, when he's placed on Guardian Circle, you choose one of your, was it grade 1 or greater? Yeah, choose one of your grade 1 or greater rear guards. You search your deck for a copy of it, call it the Guardian Circle, and then it gets the ability that when it's retired from the unit that's called, gets the ability that when it's retired from Guardian Circle, you put it on the bottom of your deck. So that is really good because, with the new grade 1s having that extra 10k shield or extra 5k shield, like you do things like clone a Million Rat from deck, and now that's 25k shield, and then that Million Rat goes back, so if you wanted to call it back out with another Million Rat skill, you can do that. So, like, a lot of the new V-era stuff has just helped old Murakumo so much because of just all the crazy stuff that it can do. And then last but not least, I run 1 single copy of Ambush Demon Stealth Rogue Shishi Izuki. She not that great. She's kind of there as a flip fodder for Shirahigano. Shirahagino, whatever. Hard name to pronounce. So she's when placed on Guardian Circle during the battle that your opponent's Vanguard attacked, you could choose one of your rear guards, move it to Guardian Circle, it gets 5k shield, and then you search your deck for a copy of the card that was moved, and then call it to Guardian Circle. Really not that great. The downside with her is that, A, has to be Vanguard on Vanguard attack, which means it's not that great. B, you're losing a card from your field, and you're losing a card from your deck. So it's interfering with your combos and stuff like that. So really, she's not used that much. Unfortunately, like, I wish there were just better G Guardian options, but unfortunately this is the best that we have. So, like I said, she's mostly flip fodder for the flip G Guard, which is significantly better. So that's my Murakumo Premium deck. Let me guys know what you think in the comments and everything like that. This is my first deck profile. I really wanted to show this deck off for you guys because it's been a pet project of mine. Any comments, suggestions, anything you'd like to see in the future, please let me know in the comments down below, and I hope you guys have a great day.